Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for spending your valuable time with the Adapt 2030 channel as we follow the sulfur dioxide eruption from Shivaloosh. The dome of the planet shall soon be covered. Mississippi River flooding. La Crosse. Only the third time since 1874 at these heights. We're going to have to put a bridge across it. Never saw these photos. Edinburgh. Historic hailstorm. Havana. Giant hail never seen before. Rice shortages 20 years. Seems to be a popular number right now. Slovakia, Poland, Hungary banning. Ukraine grain imports. Tidal wave that couldn't be exported through the Black Sea dumped in periphery nations. Speaking of seeds, a century ago, hundreds of varieties. Now we're down to dozens. We need rain to grow crops. Well, not that much rain in Indonesia and Northern Australia. Wait, is that an Ice Age map I see? Passed down from 1507? Tales of massive cities across the Amazon. Well, let's just look at the precipitation charts here. Well above the averages, leaving you sleeping in the wet spot. And those of you who've been following the last couple of weeks, we're going to do another update here. Sulfur dioxide concentrations being pulled north into the polar easterlies. This will eventually thin into a single uniform coating of sulfur dioxide. As we trace it from the 20th to the 26th, you can see the plume right over the UK and Scandinavian nations. Thins, swirls, cavitation in the atmosphere on this one. And you can follow the models all the way out, but eventually it will be a uniform solid yellow across the northern part of our world. And as I mentioned, the rice deficit, most in 20 years, but Mississippi River, highest river flooding in 20 years. Historic flooding, McGregor, Iowa. So I started to look here. La Crosse, 1874. There's only been 3 times that it's reached this type of flood stage. Looking through the measuring stations, major flood is the purple. Up at 16.1 feet. Yep, that counts. And also, look at this, McGregor, how high that is getting, 24 feet. Sand barriers being erected all along the Mississippi in anticipation for this event. This is how high the water is currently. Yes, that's a parking sign there at a riverside park underwater, which brings us to lost photos of Edinburgh. Perhaps the true history of that construction. Buried under floodwaters also. But so far, 10 counties, and it is rising. More floods inbound, more snow melt. This is going to be an event. Crest flood category, major, all the way down. And this is going to continue further south along the Mississippi. Now, why would you even care about that? Well, let's go back in time just 6 months. Massive drought in the Mississippi. Couldn't even dredge it. Grain shuttles couldn't move. They had to stack it all on the side of the Mississippi River under tarp. Remember those days? Just literally not even a year ago. Millions and millions and millions, tens of millions, tons of grain on the sides of the Mississippi River that they couldn't export last year, low water. Now, do you think they moved it? Or do you think it's still there ready to get washed downstream to then add another layer on food shortages globally? Just asking for a friend. And speaking of floodwaters, let's take a look. Precipitation, that purple and blue, far above the averages. And if we look at the latitudes on this, would make sense from the Hunga-Tonga eruption, adding more water vapor into the atmosphere, because that would be lingering around the equator at this point. That eruption was January of 2022. Collagen may do more than simply help turn back the clock on how your skin looks. The latest research suggests it may also assist with building muscle and losing fat when combined with exercise. This is why I highly recommend trying it out for yourself. It uses a groundbreaking formula that combines 5 critically important types of collagen into one easy-to-mix scoop. The best part is it's tasteless and odorless, which means it goes down with your favorite drinks and recipes. Visit healthwithadapt2030.com. That's healthwithadapt2030.com. Click on that link in the description box below and take 51% off my favorite collagen. And now on with the video. And if we look at the precipitation index left for those 3 months compared to the temperature anomalies those 3 months, even. So the cloud cover must have done something to equalize what would have been warmer. And since you know I'm a fan of ancient history and lost cultures, along with many of you watching this channel, Waldseemüller map. Since we're in Southeast Asia, it's over on the right side. When it was one giant continent connected by land almost to Australia, and you notice the other land masses that are connected. There is no Strait of Gibraltar. There is no Red Sea. The land masses are much larger. They don't seem to exactly match our world today, now do they? It's not just concocted fiction from a cartographer. It was the way our world was. Now, how did they get that map passed down from 1507? And we'll stay with Australia and New Zealand in the little box there. Purples, blues, extreme rains. And if we try to match it up here with temperature anomaly December 22 to Feb 23, equal or lower than because of cloud cover. 10% more moisture in the atmosphere is going to bring you a lot more cloud. And if the method to the madness holds, then South America should be showing the same. You got to think, Hunga-Tonga pushed 10% more moisture into the atmosphere in a single event. And this is the outcome of that. These rains will continue for another, 1 year at this level. So you have to look at how many crops have been reduced in terms of total output. And if we do the matchup again here of the same exact months, precipitation and temperature, we find the wet spot, -7 degrees Celsius. That's pretty easy. Para region in Brazil, right there, bullseye, wet spot. Latest weekly total, it has enlarged down to southern Africa, Zambia, Mozambique, South Africa. What do we see again? Heavier than normal rains. Does that match up exactly with cloud cover? Not so much on this one. It does seem to break the pattern. But there's a lot of zero on this map here. Anywhere there's no color, that's no temperature, no decline, no increase, just even. Just saying. Newspapers are telling us something else. Now, staying in South America, heavy rain, giant hail. They call it gorilla hail. This is a new term that you will hear from this point forward, gorilla hail. United States, many places. Europe, many, many places. Now we're seeing it going down southern hemisphere, destroying crops. This is what hail does if you're unfamiliar with fields after a hailstorm. Now, it's not such a large, wide encompassing area, but it gives you an idea. The larger these storms grow with more precipitation, the wider the damage will be to the crops. Now, looking at the historic hailstorm in Havana, one of the most important hailstorm events known in the history of Cuba. Never before seen hail size. So again, you would expect this as we get to the amplification phase. Radar shows that very light pink over Havana. This is the type of hail that would come. I would be surprised if a tornado didn't try to spin out of there at just how intense it is. Now, as we move forward, growing some of our foods, I know this greenhouse will not protect unless it's Solex, but I found this publication online free. How to build a cheap backyard greenhouse, step-by-step guide. All of us can use a greenhouse for sure. We're going to need to protect our crops a little more, but you know, giant hail is going to rip through a lot of plastics that you put on there, 6mm poly. And away we go into the amplification. So from now, everything should get more intense in terms of the wind velocity or how fast the winds are moving, especially the rains and the hail size. You can't put that much extra moisture in the atmosphere and expect there to be no difference at all. And now we need to add in these extra eruptions. And you know, just a few days back, Sangay volcano went up to 50,000 feet. And that's in that same exact latitudes right down around the Para region. It's just going to swing around the planet there. 50,000 foot eruption. And then Bismiani, nearly the same time as Shivolution. I showed you those previous maps, sulfur dioxide across the northern hemisphere. So it seems like we're in some sort of electromagnetic locking that's setting off a lot of volcanoes right now. If we get more and more of these 50, 60, 70,000 foot eruptions, in addition to the extra water vapor, we're going to start to see significant declines in agricultural production, which will go right with We need to ration it out. In 20 years, the floods we're talking about highest in 20 years, and now we have the world facing the worst global rice shortage in 20 years. Pick your numerology. Over to the Ukraine, grain import bans. So there's a huge amount of grain left over that can't be exported out of the Black Sea corridor. So obviously it's being sent over to periphery nations around Ukraine. Awesome, cheaper food. I think that's a good thing for people, but it's become an overburden now. Slovakia, Slovenia as well, Poland, Hungary are starting to say, whoa, that's enough. We can't. Our own farmers can't even sell it. They're at a loss. We can't subsidize further. You need to pull that back. And that's the way our world is. Discount grains over in Ukraine at the moment. Now, staying on the seed supply here, this is a great chart. It comes from the Rural Advancement Foundation International. Above, with the larger swaths of vegetables that we see, beets, cabbage, sweet corn, lettuce, peas, radish, squash, tomato, cucumbers, and muskmelons. Hundreds and hundreds of varieties. Heirloom, no less. But 80 years later, and that has been slashed to a couple hundred. So you can see how the consolidation of the seed supply for certain species also, like where are all these native heirloom varieties that were regional, statewide, countrywide, continent-wide, where have all these gone to? And just, has everything been hybridized now where you need to buy that? Go heirloom if you're going to buy anything so you can save those seeds open pollinated for next year so you can replant. That is the most important takeaway from this slide here. So important, I'm going to say it twice. Heirloom seeds. You can save the seed and plant next year. This is going to be so integral and a skill you will and I have to learn. You can never get good enough at it. The movement forward is the seeds you have now, you might share with others, y'all can grow food, that's great. But they're going to be planted and used. From this point forward, you're really going to have to think about getting off systems for a longer period of time, not just 3 months, 6 months, like years, plural, 5 years or so. We're going to go through this contraction of supply chains down into almost nothingness as geopolitical agitation and UN settled trade shifts over to a lot more UN based than US dollar, and there's a competitor with that, and just the money's going to come flooding home. Dollar doesn't have to go to zero. They're trying to portray it in the news like, oh, and it's going to, the BRICS trade is going to have to, tidal wave over and the dollar's going to be worthless. No, not at all. It just needs to have a competitor so others can choose a different settlement mechanism, and they'll say, no, we don't want the dollar. So, two choices, just like if you're going into the supermarket, for example. You're going to choose one, not the other. Saving seeds is going to be a skill set too. Now, if you can get those little paper envelopes, buy thousands of them now so you can have them for later. They cost nothing. They store forever. They're paper envelopes. And it's better and preferable. We use glass jars. We've used plastic bags. Those brown paper packets are the best that we found so far. And it doesn't get all that ice crystal if you freeze it. Like we like to store our seeds in the freezer and then pull them out. But if you do that a few times, you're going to get some moisture in there and get some seed damage just from the ice crystals forming. Again, I'm always learning. So your number one skill, in addition, like you could be the seed saver for the community. Like if that's your niche, like everybody bring their seeds and then you pack them and you put them in the paper packs and you label them and you give them back out to the people who brought it, and maybe you could keep a few of those for yourself, 10% or whatever. Like that would be a skill worthy because, I don't want to have to go the trouble of like coming at you with a ton of husks and different seeds and be like, and then picking it out. But if you had some way with a fan or something, you could clean it. I would give it to you, say you keep 10%. I'd just give me back bags of the stuff so I can replant next year. Like that's a service, and that's also a skill. Like we're going to need to go back very local again. Because as I envision our world bending, morphing in slow motion, still in movement, gaining momentum, forming into something else. Speaking of something else, Edinburgh for you, land base. This time we looked at the bridge. I don't remember seeing images like this. I'm glad I stumbled across this image set here. I was watching John Levy, shout out. If anybody hasn't been to his site, you definitely want to go John Levy's channel and take a look at the ancient history connections and images offered on that channel. But that obelisk, I would encourage you to compare this with modern day photos and see what's missing and what doesn't make sense. Just like these giant blocks and us of this age standing next to those, that doesn't make sense unless there's a different history to be told. Speaking of that, Thursday nights, 10 p.m. to midnight, Ransom Godwin and myself, 2 hours, talking about the same issues, how to protect ourselves, get ready for the changes, and what historically has happened, and how did they survive and pass through. Food. You're going to need some storable foods in the beginning, but remember, you're going to have to replenish these stocks, but it's a great way to start. 3-month emergency food supply. My Patriot Supply and Adapt 2030. That link's in the description box below, along with tonight's images, stories, graphics, so you can do your own research. I thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.